Hi, everybody. Welcome to the September 26th, 2019 Kubernetes community meeting. This is, as always, being live streamed to YouTube, and we will also have a recording up on YouTube. So just want to remind folks to adhere to our code of conduct. If we could get a note taker, that would be fantastic. We are using a Google Doc to collaboratively track the agenda and notes. It looks like Lachlan Evanson has volunteered. Thank you. I am Tim Pepper. I work for VMware as an open source software engineer and also am active in the community as a chair and SIG release. And as I volunteer in that, everything in this meeting is being presented similarly by community volunteers. So if there's anything that you would like to see here or participate in, step up and volunteer. We are always in need of new people. So in our normal agenda, we start out typically with a demo if we have one, and we have a special Brian Lyles this week doing a presentation, not on the KubeCon keynote stage today, but in our community meeting, giving us a little demo of a project that he is actively working on called Octant. So Brian, take it away, please.
All right, so hello, I'm Brian Lyles. I work at VMware, and most importantly today, I'm going to talk about this tool I have called Octant. And while I share my desktop here, let me tell you what Octant is. Octant is a tool that we created to help answer the question, what's going wrong with my stuff in Kubernetes? And when I say stuff in Kubernetes, I mean literally whatever. The whole point is that Kubernetes is purposely complex. It needs to be complex because it handles so many different situations. So, but that complexity is also a little daunting to users who either one, have better things to do, like program their apps, or two, are beginning and just don't know where to start. So normally, I mean, I can literally talk for hours about Octant, but today I'm going to show you something that I find pretty interesting about Octant and handling use cases that might actually happen to you. So before we get started, let me actually go to a web page here that I created because I work for a company and we have a website. Oh, actually, I need to play my original website. As we do in show business, we just do it all live. So here we go. So I have a website, and we're in the business of presenting HTTP bin, and we have HTTP bin as a service, if there is such a thing. And little sidebar, the reason I like this website, if you do any kind of web development and you need to test HTTP stuff out, HTTP bin is pretty great for that. It does like all the standard things, get, post, put, delete, can do auth and things like that. So, gosh, let me turn off my notifications. We have this website, and today is Thursday, but let's pretend that it's tomorrow afternoon and it's 5 p.m. And as 5 p.m., people like to deploy stuff on Fridays. I don't know why, but that's just when they want to do it. So we'll pretend that we have a super fancy deployment chain and release chain, and we'll pretend that we're not looking at what I'm doing here. So I'm redeploying my website and I'm going home. And because what can happen? All my tests passed, so things should be right. So we go to look at the website and quickly we realize the site is down. Now, this is a little bit daunting. Even if you do understand Kubernetes, there could be so many things wrong here. So as an advanced user of Kubernetes, what could you do here? Well, you can, well, let's just get all. We're going to use kube control and get everything in here. Well, I see a pod, I see a service, I see a deployment. Get all doesn't even show ingresses, so I don't know how useful that is to everyone. But let's get this ingress too. Well, we have an ingress here. So where do I start to get these things figured out? Well, I want to short circuit all that with another tool. And the reason we developed Octant was to actually help solve these problems and do other things. So let's fire up Octant and see what we have going on here. So Octant is a web-based tool that runs locally that can talk to your cluster, and it uses your credentials. And you're going to say, Brian, why doesn't it run in the cluster? Well, there is a whole suite of issues we can get rid of, namely security issues, by just using one set of credentials inside, one set of credentials that you provide and running it local. So we don't have to worry about cluster resources, and we don't have to worry about security in this case. So this is Octant. Right now, Octant is a web view. Ultimately, I think we're going to bundle it inside of an application, kind of like what GitHub did with their tools, or even what VS Code did with their editor, because I just think that'll be a better experience. But how can we use Octant to figure out what's wrong? So when you first go to Octant, you get a list of the namespace that you're currently in, and you can see all these things. Since time is a interesting thing here, I will not go through all of them, but I want to show you a new feature that we're going to release in our next version of Octant. I guess that would be in probably about 3.5 to 4 weeks. That will actually allow you to see an application and see all the components of it. So Octant has this concept of applications, and we see there's an application called HTTP bin right here. And the astute people around are probably saying, well, hold on, what's an application? And what we're doing here is something that was agreed upon by Kubernetes community over the last year, where we can actually use labels for good. And in this case, what we're doing is we're using the recommended labels, and specifically we're looking at name and instance and version. Will support the rest of these in an upcoming release to actually signify what a application is. So if you see right now, these ones starting with app.kubernetes.name, let me show you those actually inside of Octant. So you'll notice that we've labeled every single component that belongs to our application with these labels. So in this case, I have 3 labels here that say demo and then HTTP bin and v1, and I've labeled everything. And because I've done that, Octant can use that convention to actually group things together. So it searched through a namespace, in this particular demo namespace that I'm using, to actually find all the objects. And because we can find all the objects, then we can do a little bit of building of graphs and figure out how things are connected together. So another thing that Octant has inside of it is this tool called the resource viewer. And I'll bump it one time here. No, actually, the names aren't important, the colors are. And what it does is it connects everything together. So deployments should be connected to replica sets should be connected to pods to services to ingress. And just looking at this right now, there's 3 things that I noticed. One is that not everything is connected. So something is wrong in our environment. And the next piece is that we have a red item and we have an orange item. Let's look at this red one first. So inside of Octant, since we know how ingresses work, we can make guesses about how an ingress should function. So in this case, what we have here is that this HTTP bin thing, ingress, has a bad configuration. It has a backend which refers to a service that doesn't exist. So this is the first example of using Octant to determine how things are working. And just to, we don't have editors for every single object yet, but we're building those. So what I'll do is I'll just use Control Edit to fix this thing. So if I go down here, I can see that in the rule, the backend actually is pointing to the wrong thing. And in real time, I won't even switch the editor yet. What you're going to see is now the ingress goes back to green because it's configured correctly. It can find a service. So now let's go look at this service. This service is telling us that there's no endpoints. For a service to route traffic to pods, it has to have endpoints. And if it doesn't have endpoints, it can't route traffic. And what's going on here? So if we look at this thing, this service is not configured incorrectly at all. It's fine. But what we do know, and this is something that I want Octane to be able to tell people, is that services route to pods and they use a selector. And we'll notice that the selector it's most likely wrong. But we do have a selector editor in here. And what I'm going to do is just change the selector to match my application. So I can match the demo HTTP bin v1. And then I'm just going to edit it from inside of the application. And what I'm going to do now is go back to my application and see if the graph is all connected and all green. And in this case, it is. So what I can guess now is that my site is running correctly. And from Octane's point of view, it should be running correctly. So if I go ahead and reload this page, let me actually do this. Am I going to the right website? All right. Well, it should have been working. Maybe there's a problem somewhere else. So Octane is showing us this, but Octane can also do something else here. So let me deploy another version of my website. And this is saying that it's now during the week again, and we've wrapped our website. You didn't see it, but really quickly, what Octane can do is it can track all your replica sets. It can track a deployment in real time. So because we can track a deployment in real time, we can actually show you how things are changing inside of your namespace. And what we want to do here is we want to be able to actually show you on the side that, hey, we detected a new deployment. And when we detect a new deployment, we can actually show you that, hey, we created this new replica set, and this replica set is waiting for these pods to show up. Or we can do something like a scale event, where we can say that we could detected a scale event, and now we can track your scale event, and we'll be able to show you this. So now, if I go back to my website here, we can see that I deployed a new version. And the new deployed version is we just moved from HTTP to Nginx. So this is literally the nickel tour of Octane. You can download it at github.com/vmware/Octane. We have binaries for Mac, Windows, and Linux. We're trying to get people into the community more. We have some issues that are some good first issues. We're in the we're in the Kubernetes Slack under Octane. Please come in there. I and my team, we're there to answer questions and try to make a tool that everyone likes. And I want to end this with one final thing. I tweeted this last week. I don't think people are understanding what I was saying, is that Kubernetes needs to benefit from a Rails moment. And really what I meant there, and I'll talk about this more in a different forum, is that convention over configuration is powerful. We need to figure out what that looks like in the Kubernetes land, so we can make tools that are still flexible but are still powerful. Because what happens in a lot of cases is that we're creating tools that are powerful, but they have no basis. They're pretty abstract, which means they're not flexible to our environments. So we need to figure out how to do that. So that ends the tool. If you have any more questions, hit us up, Slack, GitHub, Twitter. We're in all these places. And thank you for viewing. And I will stop my share.
And if
We
there's
take
anybody,
questions.
yeah, if we've got a couple minutes if anybody has any questions right now.
All right. So there are no questions. So one thing that I will want to say, while if anyone wants to type any questions, then I'll just say this real quick. Visualizations are hard. And so one thing that we are focusing on, and hopefully we can get this in our next release, is we do have a new version of the visualization that you showed there, because I want to make sure that we can put in as much information as clear as possible, because it's pretty difficult to show these things. But I want to show it in a thing that if someone can sit down with this tool, not really understand all the pieces of how everything works, but they can still feel empowered to fix problems as they come about. So that's Octane, and we're actively working on it.
Awesome. Last call for any questions for Brian. All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you.
So next up on the agenda is our regular release updates, and we have Gwen Sanger, who I see just joined, who is our new incoming release team lead. So anything on 117 that you would like to share with everybody?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Guinevere. I go by Gwen or Guinevere. Um, I'm super excited to lead the last release of this year. Currently, we're in week one. We are very, very busy selecting team lead shadows and also looking over enhancements, cleaning up the milestone. Thanks to Bob for that work. And if you have any questions for me, please ping me on Slack, let me know, get in touch. Uh, the real big thing for 117 currently is only that I want everyone to please be aware of deadlines. Some of them are a little bit more squished together than usual because it's the end of the year and I want to avoid conflicts with holidays, KubeCon. Just so please be aware and scope your work accordingly. Are there any questions?
If somebody wants to get involved with the release team, that call for shadows that you mentioned, where should they do that?
So we actually closed shadow applications yesterday. So
It's just down to
those people
selection
who
then.
applied will get notified soon. And Bob just reminded me that enhancements freeze is not too far off. Tuesday, October 15, end of day. So that's 5 p.m. Pacific to give everyone a couple extra hours, except us on the Pacific timeline.
All right, thanks for the update. So patch releases, I also volunteer on the patch release team. So there's a link there to the schedule. We've fallen into a cadence of basically mid-month releases on all of the patch branches, with the exception of our .1 release is typically 2 weeks out instead of 4 weeks out. So that is coming up here soon. Cherry pick deadline for that is tomorrow for 116.1 and a release target of next week, and 2 weeks after that, subsequent releases of everything. And of course, those are always subject to change if we've got something for a critical security CVE that comes through. We have a contributor tip of the week, Mr. Bob Killen.
Hey, let me actually share this really quick. Okay, so this is honestly essentially a shortcut to a complex regular expression. But if you are curious about the things that you or others are possibly an owner of, you can now go to use our normal shortcut. If I could type /owners, where and then your GitHub handle, and that will tell you, give you a quick little search of what owners files you happen to be in. And this is kind of, kind of important with just, we have a whole slew of owner sprawl. So sort of getting an idea of where you might be an owner will give you an idea of, where some of this stuff is coming in. And if you just do a little audit, it won't take too long, but it will just help the experience for everyone.
And there, I think the call is for folks to think about whether they're a gating entity for too much, maybe, or think about scaling and building out other peers or folks helping them to spread the load so things remain efficient, that we get faster time to review.
Exactly.
And higher quality contributor experience from that. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
All right, next then is our regular SIG updates. We have one SIG, and then also for the first time, we have working groups coming to give updates on their activities as well. So SIG CLI is our first for today.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. I also pasted the link to the presentation in the chat. Okay.
And we have your screen. Looks good. Yep.
Perfect. So my name is Maciej. I'm one of the leads for the SIG CLI. And a quick information on what we've been working in the 116 release timeframe and what we are planning to work on in the next release as well. So the majority of the efforts that we are focusing on over the past and the current release is getting kubectl out of the main Kubernetes repository. As you probably noticed, majority of you that are working with Kubernetes repo, we moved about 95% of kubectl commands over to the staging repo. So that was our first big move. A lot of work has been put to from many people over the past, I would even say 2 years, to get us to the current stage where we have the staging repo of kubectl. This is important because beforehand, a lot of the code inside of kubectl was relying on the internals, such as the internal types, internal clients, and whatnot, as well as during that entire work, we've extracted several libraries that we hope will be of reasonable usage for other people, such as CLI runtime, which we are targeting for kubectl plugin authors. So as it is not a surprise, we are continuing with the effort because there are still 3 main commands that are left in the main repo, which are causing us a lot of problems. First of them is the get command. And the reason that the get command was not moved is that the work required to move get, I would estimate at about half of the work that is needed to move the entire kubectl. Half of the work is just get itself. So we moved a lot of the bits and pieces already to the staging repo, but there is still quite a lot to be done. And Sean is doing an awesome work currently finishing the get command. Mostly that is related with how we are printing the resources when you are invoking get pods, for example. The other offender, I would call it that way, where we are still struggling is the auth reconcile. And the reason for that is another example where we still rely on the internal utilities from the main Kubernetes repository. And we are in contact with the SIG auth to try to extract a library that we can share between Kubernetes repo and the kubectl. And the third offender, where we took a slightly different approach, is a kubectl convert. If you've ever tried working with kubectl convert, it is basically a command that allows you to convert from one version to another if your resource coexists in multiple versions. Like, for example, deployments, they used to exist in extension v1 beta 1, which is disabled by default these days, but you still might have some YAML files reusing the extensions v1 beta 1. Using the kubectl convert, you can convert that file to a apps v1, which is the default API version for deployments. The problem with kubectl convert is that it greatly relies on the internal APIs. So the decision was made back in 1.13 release timeframe that we are going to deprecate the command, and we are going to split the command from kubectl itself. So it will exist, but it will exist either in the main Kubernetes repository or inside of API machinery. We are still under discussions trying to figure out the best place. I'm guessing that the final destination will rely on where the internal API exists. But don't be surprised if in 1.17 you type kubectl convert and you will be prompted with a gentle message that kubectl convert is not part of kubectl anymore, and you need to get a separate binary that will provide that functionality. Other topics that we are looking at for 1.17s are around experimental commands to work with commands. Currently, the only way to work with events. Currently, the only way to work with events is through get command or describe. The get command for events is quite cumbersome because it throws at you a bunch of events and doesn't allow you to filter or sort them in any reasonable way. Whereas in Describe, you get the description of the resource and events related to that one. What we would like to have is some kind of a more powerful tooling that will allow you to interact with events and filter them by name, by related resource, and whatnot. Finally, there is a discussion that happened some time ago, about a month or 2 months ago. What will be the future of kubectl copy? Due to several security issues with kubectl over the past 12 months, we had to respond to several CVEs. Most of the CVEs were related to how we are handling symlinks. So we're trying to figure out whether what will be the future of kubectl, how much we want to support, how much time we can devote into fixing those CVEs. If you're curious or you have opinions, there's a cap open for kubectl copy direction. Okay, my screen go off. Okay. The sub-projects that we own, there are 2 of them that are worthy of mentioning. Kustomize, which allows you to customize row templates and apply additional modifications. About a couple months back, we released version 3 of it. Recently, we released specifically version 3.2, which extended the amount of possible patches, including the inline patch for Kustomize, and we improved the resource matching. If you haven't played with Kustomize, check it out. It's pretty cool. It definitely allows to have much more control over the yums, and you don't have to modify the default yums that you have on your disk. The other interesting project that just got its 0.3 release, specifically 0.3.1 in the past 2 weeks, is Crew. Crew is a plugin manager for kubectl plugins. It is a plugin by itself, but what's most importantly, it allows you to search through the curated index that currently holds about 50 plugins, and we're hoping to expand the index even more. To close, my name is Maciej. I'm both a chair and a tech lead for 6CLI. Sean is my co-chair, and Phil is my code tech lead. You can find us at the regular places, which is Kubernetes 6CLI mailing list, 6CLI Slack channel, or you can find or learn more about 6CLI in the community repo. And I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover. Thanks.
Thank you, Maciej. And we're doing good on schedule. If there's any brief questions, you could pause here for a moment. All right, thanks. We will move on to working group policy. And a special thanks to Howard for joining us. It's an awkward time zone.
Okay. So I'm gonna just share the screen, right? Okay, can you see the screen?
Looks good, yep.
Okay. So this is the first time the policy working group is doing the update on the community meeting, and sorry for the bad hotel network quality. So a bit background. Unlike SIGs, which are mostly vertical, working on specific areas, and our Kubernetes release cycle bind, Working groups are more like horizontal, touches with multiple SIGs and working on long-term topics. So for us, we are focusing on policy, and one of the main reason we are doing the working group is we found that policies are designed like and also all over the place in Kubernetes. And you can see it for like RBAC, scheduling, network, and so forth. And since policy description are like domain specific in nature, so we mostly focus on the policy semantic and control mechanism. And this is kind of the relationship between policy working group and many other organizations in Kubernetes. Okay. So for our working group, we keep a running list of interested items. So we are not tightly bind to the release cycle. So for this year, couple items that we are interested in and also have been discussing with the related teams. For example, multi-tenancy policies with the multi-tenancy working group, with the Gatekeeper project, especially on the PSP migration. We also are looking at some of the very like new and long-term directions.
We might have lost your audio. Yeah, I think we've lost you. I'll give you a moment to see if you come back. Yeah, I think let's see. Yeah, we've definitely lost. Oh, maybe you're,
Sorry,
yeah, we have you again now, yep.
they're dropped.
Yeah, we dropped your audio. We can hear you now.
Okay.
You'll need to reshare your slides.
Okay. Let me try to do that.
And we see him again, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been doing some case studies. So for this year, we have Kyverno and Cloud Custodian, sort of two policy engine projects in addition to OPA coming over. And in past year, we have projects like Cilium, and many other CNCF level projects coming over for the case study. So for the upcoming cycles, still we are keep focusing on several key areas, like I said, security policy, migration, multi-tenancy policy, and many other important policy-related topics. We are now having a side project, mostly developed by Robert from the OPA team. So we are running it like a POC project for the policy formal verification. If you are digging into like math, please take a look at the project. This will be the most mathematical thing you will ever encounter with Kubernetes. Okay, so and we'll also try to better align with the CNCF 6 security. To contribute in our working group, just participate in our bi-weekly meeting. Or if you are working on a project that is related to policy, you can propose a case study. And also, if your KEPs are related to policy, just label your KEP with workgroup policy. Okay. The current chairs are me and Erica from Red Hat. So this is our homepage. We have a Slack channel and also a Google group. That'll be all.
All right, thank you. And we also still remain good on time. So if anybody has any policy working group questions, take a moment here to pause and open the floor. All right, looks like there are none. So thank you again for the update. And next up is the component standard working group.
Hello, let me just share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see it?
Yep, looks good.
All right, let's present. So I'm Mike Toffin, and I'm one of the chairs of Working Group Component Standard. Happy to be at the meeting today, so thanks for having us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our working group and kind of what we do. We have some updates from last cycle, some information about some work that's in progress, and some hopefully exciting things about the future and why people should come join us. So first off, our working group is designed to help develop a standard foundation for core Kubernetes components to build on top of. So you could think of it as kind of like some standard libraries and frameworks that consolidate a lot of the code that has been independently implemented for the same features across a lot of our components. So examples would be code for dealing with config, logging, different sort of status endpoints on components, different integration points, that sort of thing. So Working Group Component Standard kind of grew out of this kept for creating the component base repo, and is designed to put all of these different efforts that people were already working on these different things in one place, give it a forum for discussion, and hopefully get some work done. So we think this is important kind of for the sustainability and maintainability of the project, and affects most of us. And most components have many areas that can have some improvement. We have a weekly meeting on Tuesdays at 8:30 a.m. as well for people who are interested. Okay, so what we did last cycle. So first off, we had a few leadership changes. The working group was started around KubeCon last year in December with myself, Stefan Szymanski from Red Hat, and Lucas. Lucas this summer stepped down from his chair position, and he's been replaced by Stealthy Box as our newest chair, who's been really great, really involved in the working group. So that's been great. We had a contributor onboarding session in July. So welcome and thank you to all the new contributors who came to that. That's recorded and it's on YouTube and our playlist, which we have a link to later in the presentation. So for people who are interested, that's also a great way to kind of check out the working group. So we're a relatively small working group right now, but trying to grow. So we managed to ship a few things last cycle. Stealthy Box had some small refactoring. We managed to get strict serializer support into Codec Factory. So what that means is now components that read in config files can reject files that have unrecognized keys in the config. So previously we were just using the basic API machinery where if you made a typo in a field name, the field would just get ignored. For example, you would get an error back. So now we have the ability to give back those errors, and we have some people who are working on actually implementing that support in components themselves. We also have the legacy flag library that I wrote, which is kind of a thin wrapper around pflag that is supposed to help with some of the more challenging tasks when people migrate to component configurations, especially around maintaining backwards compatibility during the deprecation timeline of the flags that you're migrating to config. So we also have a bunch of work in progress. Notably, we have a lot of work by new contributors who are being mentored in the working group. So Jorge has been working on a prototype of porting kubeproxy to use that legacy flag library. Alex has been working a lot on the strict serializers and getting those enabled across more components. So that's been great work. We also have a number of kind of important KEPs that are in flight, few around graduating various components, component config APIs to beta. We have some ideas around how to handle fields and optional parameters in component config. Some discussions around whether we should just totally get rid of command line flags or provide at least some way to do some light overrides for debugging or simple config cases in component config right now. And so now this is the most important slide of this presentation. This is about the future and kind of where we need help. So today, a lot of our projects have been focused on config because that was one of the sort of core founding things of the working group, but we're actually scoped to do a lot more than just config. Again, this is for developing a sort of standard foundation for core components to build on top of. So if you see opportunities where the same feature is implemented in a lot of different places, but you think it should have a common implementation, common foundation, our working group is the place to come and propose that and work on it. And we are, again, we actively mentor new contributors, and we're happy to have new people. We just sent out an email, some of you might have seen earlier this week, requesting new people, and we've gotten a ton of interest. So in our weekly meeting next week, we'll be running a small intro session kind of to the working group and how to get started on some of our ongoing projects. So for people who are interested, please reach out to us on Slack on our mailing list. So again, how you can get started, come to our meeting next week. We'll have an intro session. You can find open issues in our project board or with our WG component standard label on GitHub. Our Slack channel is hashtag WG-component-standard. So reach out to us there. I think I actually have that on the next slide as well. Reach out to us there and on the mailing list. We can mentor you if you want to work on projects. We're mentoring people right now. It's a great way to get started in the community. So here's some basic information. Myself, StealthyBox, and Stefan are the chairs. We've got the homepage link there, Slack channel, mailing list. Also a link to all of our meetings recorded on YouTube. That's our playlist. You can also find the onboarding session we ran over the summer there. So thanks so much.
Great, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Working Group Component Standard? All right, thank you again. I really appreciate folks coming and sharing this. Between the weekly meeting and the recordings of these and getting each of the SIGs and now working groups also coming by quarterly, we really hope that this community meeting becomes sort of the one-stop shop. Spend a maximum hour a week keeping a pulse of the overall project, what is going on. All right, moving on to our next topic area, we have announcements, election status for the steering committee. George or Bob Killen, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, just a reminder that the deadline for voting, if you've received your ballot, is this upcoming Wednesday, October 2nd. And at this meeting 1 week from now, the steering committee will announce the results of the election. 302 of you out of the 858 have voted. If you're in the voters MD, and I put the link in the notes there, if you're in that file and you have not received a ballot, please let us know at election@kubernetes.io, and all this has been published on the Kubernetes dev mailing list. If you're not in that file, then you've missed all the deadlines, so we'll have to snag you next time. And that's it.
Thank you, George. And I would encourage everybody who is there in the voters MD, everybody in the community, please participate in the election. It's important to having your voice represented. All right then, shout outs for the week, or actually before the shout outs, I'll pause for a moment since we're doing good on time. If anybody else has anything that wasn't in the agenda that they would like to throw out there for the cross community, any announcements to be shared out broadly? Not seeing any, all right. So shout outs for the week. We have a channel on Slack called Shout Outs. And it's just a place to show appreciation and give thanks and celebrate the work of your peers in our huge community. And it was a very active channel this week, which is kind of natural. We just finished the 1.16 release, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And people are kind of doing a pause in between release cycles and kind of thinking about where their teammates have been great teammates and expressing that in the channel. So to kind of go through them, Lachlan Evanson, who is our note taker today, but was also our outgoing release team lead for 1.16. He gives a big thanks to Gwen Singer. It looks like Jeff and Nico for being fantastic leads also in the Kubernetes 1.16 release cycle. Also, thanks from Lachlan to Liggett, Seablecker, and Dims for their tireless work during the 1.16 release. These three in particular are stellar community members who are just on top of all sorts of things, and they're sort of members of the release team at large, making things happen and really getting things done in the last moments of the release. More SIG release shoutouts from Stephen Augustus and a link to a tweet that he gave out there, just really feeling some pride for the release team, and SIG Release appreciates all of the volunteers there and what all they do to get each release out. Jason de Tiberis has a shout out to a large list of people from the Cluster API team who came together, I think this was the week before last, for a face-to-face planning session where they were working to define and scope their next release of the project. Again, Stephen Augustus thanking Jason for helping organize that face-to-face and keeping things on task, and it sounds like they had a very productive meeting. Josh Burkus, a huge shout out to Tim Hawken for coming up with tons of ideas for contributor summit sessions. The contributor summit is coming up the day before the official program of KubeCon starts, and the schedule I think is just about to get released, and people have been submitting topics, and Tim Hawken submitted quite a few great suggestions there that Josh is really appreciative of as the organizer of, or one of the organizers of, the content for the summit. And Tim Hawken thanks Josh and everybody else who are involved in volunteering on that, because it is a large volunteer event. And finally, Vince Prignano, a shout out to Cecil for putting a huge amount of work towards publishing CapZ, the cluster API Azure for V1 Alpha 2. So again, this is a great place for you to give a shout out, to get some visibility recognition for your peers when they're doing a great job. Do that in Slack, and we will echo it here in the community meeting. And with that, we are just a bit ahead of schedule, but I thank everybody for an efficient meeting and great information sharing, and we will get this uploaded to YouTube. Thanks, everybody, and we'll be back again next week. If you'd like to volunteer, reach out to George Castro, and you can get on the agenda for future demos or being present also and helping lead the meeting as I am, or taking notes as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.